There is so much to tell about the Incas. The Incan Empire was the largest empire. Throughout this documentary, you will learn the history of the Incas, after the Incas, and how the Incas fell. I hope you enjoy our documentary about how Ecuador was affected by the Incas.
The Inca, a wonderful and amazing civilization with riches beyond belief. They were so rich that historians haven't found a civilization that can even compare with its riches. Now you may be asking, how could such a great empire with all its riches just disappear from the face of the planet? Well, I'm here to tell you a little bit about the Inca, how they affected Ecuador, and what led to their demise. Before we can find out let's look back to the beginning. As for before the Inca, there is not much to talk about. The Inca were the first major civilization south of the equator, so there wasn't much before them. The earliest people were the Valdeva. They were people that stuck to the coast because of food and water. They lived around 3,500 BCE, at least 4,500 years before the Inca. Around 500 years later, there were the Canaras and the Quilcaras. They lived further inland. Although we know this much, most of the rainforest in Ecuador has not been explored, so there might be many more tribes. Although most people think Peru when they think of the Inca were all over the west coast of South America. One of those countries that the Inca was in was Ecuador. In the 15th century, the Inca armies invaded Ecuador. The tribes there were no match for the Inca armies, and the Incas quickly defeated them. One of the tribes were the Caras people, who lived in what is now Quito. For a century, the Incas intermarried with the native tribes and collected taxes for roads, temples, and pyramids. For the first time, all of Ecuador was under one ruler in one empire and had only one major language. Finally, a civil war tore the old empire apart and weakened it so much the Spanish had an easy time taking it over. The Incas were very advanced people for their time. They had roads that connected all the major and not-so-major cities. They were experts at mining and had tons upon tons of gold, silver, and other precious minerals. They spoke Quechua. Quechua was a very complex language that didn't have any written form. That means that most knowledge of the Inca and all knowledge of their mythology and language is from stories and word. That means no letters, emails, or anything like that. If you wanted to tell someone something, you had to get a messenger, tell him the message, and hope he could memorize it. Their religion was mainly based on the sun god, Inti. They had many vast temples to their gods filled with all the precious minerals that they had. The entire family worked except for the babies, who were left alone all day. No one in the empire went hungry because of how the empire was run. Every farmer gave his crop to the emperor, and the emperor distributed it all over his people. The Inca government was run by an emperor with 4 governors to control a province. So there was 4 provinces. Each of the governors was like a mini emperor. Every citizen paid taxes. In return, the emperor would give them food. The Incas were doing just great until an emperor and his only son died of smallpox. That was brought by the Spanish. This led to civil war between Prince Huáscar and the great warrior Atahualpa. This war was the longest ever fought by the Incas and lasted more than 5 years. Eventually, Atahualpa proved that he was the better warrior and won the war. The civil war weakened the empire a lot. Francisco Pizarro heard of an empire far greater in wealth compared to the Aztecs, and so set sail from Panama to the west coast of South America with 110 men and 67 cavalry. The following day, Pizarro met Atahualpa Atahualpa thought Pizarro was coming to talk peace, but he was mistaken because when he declined to become a Christian and submit to the Spanish king, Pizarro took him hostage. Atahualpa said he would give Pizarro 2 rooms full of silver and 1 room full of gold. Pizarro took the gold and silver, but kept Atahualpa hostage, and on August 22nd, 1533, he was executed for treason against the Spanish state. From there on, the Spanish came through and destroyed the Inca Empire and melted down all their gold that they had.
Ecuador's official language is Spanish, but Quechua is what the Incas spoke. People travel to Ecuador to learn eliminating Spanish. A language. That's what Spain did to Ecuador. Spain literally took the original language, Quechua. Quechua is very similar to Spanish. The loss of their language was one step closer to the loss of the Incan culture. Peru and Ecuador were mostly affected by Francisco Pizarro. Now let's take a step back in time to see how the language Spanish came to be in Ecuador. To claim the land, 2 gods fought to become the ruler of the Incas. Stepbrothers named Atahualpa and Hodska both wanted to become the ruler of the Incas, so they fought to the death. This caused the civil war between brothers. This caused a population disturbance. This war was 3 years long. At the end, Atahualpa won and became the ruler of the Incas. In 1531, Spain sailed to South America. The head conquistador was named Francisco Pizarro. His plan was to wipe out many countries around South America. Peru and Ecuador were the last ones to conquer. Spain started trying to take over in 1533. Pizarro took Atahualpa captive. Francisco taught him Spanish for 9 months. Not long after, every Inca spoke Spanish. Once all the Incas were fluently speaking Spanish, Pizarro killed Atahualpa. Pizarro became the new ruler of the Incas. Since Pizarro was now ruler, he planned to have the Incas as his slaves. Over all this madness, the Incas had finally fell. With the language Quechua gone, the Incas had been drifting away from their culture. Till this day, people in Ecuador still speak Spanish. 90% of people still speak Spanish. Less than 10% of people still speak Quechua though. You might be wondering why Spanish stuck in Ecuador. Spanish is spoken as the original language, but Quechua, it was very similar to Spanish. Plus, since all the Incas learned Spanish, they forgot how to speak the original language, Quechua. Or you might be wondering how Spanish drastically changed Ecuador. Well, with their language gone, Spain changed their culture and how they ran things. Because once they learned Spanish, they had to do whatever Pizarro wanted, since he was the new ruler. As you can see, Francisco Pizarro changed Ecuador just like he did with many other countries.
Ecuador. It looks like a nice place. How did it get to this point? What influenced it? Let's go back in time to see what happened hundreds of years ago when Ecuador was first discovered by the Spanish conquistadors and what happened to everything around Ecuador. In 1534, Ecuador became part of Spain's territory and just another step towards Spain's attempt to conquer the world. After Francisco Pizarro came over to find the Incas' gold, he saw how Ecuador would be a perfect place for the Spanish to settle. After claiming it, he started a civilization for the Spanish, and more people came. In 1535, the Incas saw that the Spanish settlers were starting to settle around Ecuador. The Incas did not like that at all. So then the Spanish and the Incas had the Great Conquest. Eventually, the Spanish won and actually claimed Ecuador for good. After the Great Conquest against the Incas, the Spanish needed a place to find a city. What they did was they grabbed every other piece of supplies after the Great Conquest and headed out over the mountains and over rivers. What they found was amazing. They found a whole place with Inca treasure and Inca civilization, like ancient cities. What Pizarro thought was that this would be a perfect place for them to build a city. What they did was they went around some more and they found a little isolated place. That was where they built their city. Today, Ecuador has been influenced by Pizarro because he had found it. If he had not found it, people would not even be living there right now. Spanish settlers started to become interested in Quito, so they got on boats and headed towards Quito. This is Ecuador. This is the past of Ecuador and what influenced it today. Thank you for watching my documentary. I hope you liked it very much.